I can't believe that there's a Heather Sommelier here. It feels like a massive secret.
I did have a couple chuckles when I was reading the book, and when Debbie was telling me about it as we were kind of moving this forward, I thought that was pretty lucky and pretty coincidental.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, let's get going. If you're okay, I've got a few notes here and I'll just open and we'll talk about this. All right, so my name is Debbie Gordon, for all of those who are watching today, and I am the writer and the voice today behind a must-read blog. I'm usually writing about producers or what my neighbors are drinking here in Toronto during the pandemic, but today we are talking about books, and I am so incredibly excited to welcome Lizzy Dent, who has just published this amazing book called, and I don't know if I have the latest title here because this is an advanced copy.
No, it is.
Wow.
Finished copy.
Oh, yay. The Summer Job, and The Summer Job was an incredibly fun read, I have to say. It was such a tonic, a welcome tonic during the pandemic. And long story short, this is a story about Birdie, who is a young millennial woman who scores, yes, a summer job at a fine dining resort with a 2 Michelin star chef by pretending to be a sommelier. And I just, first chapter, I was gasping reading that, knowing what's involved. And she gets this job, of course, in the idyllic Scottish Highlands, and by pretending to be her best friend, Heather, who is actually a respected master of wine. So it is a deliciously fun read. And we have a second guest with us today, who's actually another very accomplished sommelier. I want to welcome Heather McDougall, and Heather has worked at a lot of restaurants across Canada, highly respected. But when she lost her position recently, she was able to very quickly pivot and reinvent herself as Sips Toronto. And so Heather is now selling wine and talking about wine and creating wine events here in the Ontario area. And I want to welcome you both so much to this discussion today. And thank you, we made it despite my technical glitches at this end. So maybe Lizzy, we can start first. Where did this idea come from for the book, and why is sommelier in hospitality?
Well, my aunt and uncle are hoteliers in Scotland. And so when I was younger, I went over there and worked for them on my big sort of overseas trip from New Zealand. And I kind of, I've never forgotten that, being sort of from, I don't know, a not very gastronomical family. My parents didn't drink really. The food was quite, Northern British. It wasn't very experimental. And I arrived in Scotland and suddenly I was thrust into this world of like wine and seafood and, fine dining and white tablecloths. And even though I was 19 then, so I was a lot younger, I loved that experience and I wanted to write about someone having the same experience.
Nice. Yeah, it's just so rich in food and wine. There's so much to work with there. But Heather, what did you think about the book's premise? And I guess specifically from a sommelier's perspective, having worked the floor, I know my heart was racing after chapter 1. So you got to the tension part of that arc very early in this book, I have to say. Heather, what were your thoughts?
I thought it was a super fun read, and I tend to avoid work things when I'm not working, but I read this book in 2 days. So I thought it was super great, and kind of working through this premise. And in the world of hospitality, we're not always fully trained for the positions we are given. So I saw a lot of myself in her journey to figure out what was going on, how she was going to make it happen, learn about all those wines, learn about service. My first wine program was given to me in a very short amount of time. I wasn't even a certified sommelier yet. So I had to kind of, oh gosh, now I'm the person in the building that is supposed to have all these answers. So I felt a lot of that kind of old panic come up. I'm like, she's gonna do it, she's gonna do it, she's gonna do it.
You are truly Heather.
Yeah.
A living, breathing version of Birdie. So Lizzy, how much work went into writing this book? I mean, it is very, the first read through that I had, I was really caught in the story. And the second time I read through it, I realized, yeah, there's a lot of food and wine pairings going on here. So how much work was that for you?
It was so it was a lot of work. I mean, I knew some basics. Anyone that works in hospitality, you know, you have a crash course and you learn pretty quickly to serve, you know, red wine with steak and white wine with fish, and you learn the basics pretty quickly. And I knew a little bit more than that. So I had a pretty elevated understanding, but I did so much research into the dishes that people were serving around that area. I spoke to a Michelin-starred chef called Michael, who runs Loch Bay, which is a restaurant in Skye, and he told me all about, like, you know, if there's a storm, the boats can't go out, and therefore there's no lobster on the menu tomorrow. And he sort of talked me through their ordering system, which I found really fascinating, because in Inverness you could get anything really that you needed, but on the West Coast there is a delivery issue. You know, if you need lemons, can be a 4-hour drive if you don't have them. So he talked to me about all of that and how the ordering went. So I did, you know, calls. I spoke to a sommelier as well about it. I mean, he told me the premise was ridiculous, but I think, you know, it's. I remember when the publisher in the US bought the book, she said to me, you know, I buy literature, I buy all this, and then she says, and once a year I like to buy something wildly entertaining, and this is the book this year for me. And I hope that people can, like, enjoy that it's a little bit crazy. Just go for the ride, because I realize I don't want anyone to think that I think being a sommelier is easy, because I know how difficult it is. And that's kind of why it was fun to choose that job, you know.
Right. Interesting. So Heather, what were some of the wine and food highlights for you then? What really stuck out?
Maybe the most impactful, and this is going to be a compliment. I didn't read anything and think, wow, did she even do research? No, I thought it was lovely. But I really like kind of the high-low combination of Gruyere on toast with vintage champagne. I think that's a really classic pairing. I mean, in the region, gorging yourself on those little gougères that are filled with cheese with champagne, I think is one of the classic pairings. And I really loved how we kept the champagne and kept it super elevated, but made it more appropriate for the Scottish countryside and just put cheese on toast. I thought that was really cute.
It was funny because I didn't realize that cheese went with champagne. That was really surprising, like, to me.
Nutty, like drier style cheeses are beautiful with vintage champagnes.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing, isn't it? Because this is what I mean about wine that's so interesting. I know the basics, like red wine and port go with cheese, but when you start to go down lower into the different, you find out actually there's champagne that goes really well with these types of cheese, and there's this kind of sweet wine that goes really well with this type of cheese, and that's why it's so complicated. You can have a basic knowledge of wine, but you can also go super nerd, like deep.
Okay, so then Heather, were there any pairings that were part of the story that jumped out at you and you were like, okay, so how about let's talk about Merlot and crab, which is Heather in the book, Heather's first misstep. I know I inhaled deeply. What was your reaction?
My reaction was, I feel sorry for anyone who has to try that together. The reason that we avoid like fuller bodied red wines with seafood is that when we have them together, the tannin interacting with the seafood, and it could be shellfish or bivalves or finfish, it produces a very metallic flavor on the palate. So if you love eating copper pennies, I'm sure that pairing would have been knocked out of the park. But if you don't, I can almost not imagine anything more horrible.
Right. Right. So,
Crazy.
yeah, I know there's the science behind it all, which is why we're all here together today. Okay, and then we have spring greens and turnip foam with blade steak. And the answer was, best pairing option for that one was Argentinian Pinot.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool call because we lean into the protein, and Argentinian Pinot, because it tends to be cooler climate, it will have more tannin and a little bit elevated acidity. And because there's so much direct and bright sunlight, we have this beautiful development of flavors in this wine, because cool climate wines need an extended growing season. And during that long growing season, we develop both sugar ripeness, which gives us a little bit of pigment, but also phenolic ripeness, which gives us really great intensity of flavor. So we end up with a Pinot Noir that is kind of jam-packed with flavor, a little bit lighter in body, so it's not going to overwhelm the more delicate vegetal aspects of that dish, but there's going to be enough tannin and acid to handle that protein.
Wow, this is amazing. We've got to do some things together, Heather, for sure. This is amazing. Oh no, it's really good to hear that, it's because you know with these things, I know that there are rules, but then you think, oh God, is a wine expert going to look at that and think, oh, that was too obvious or not clever enough, or but that's great to hear.
The world of wine is so broad and so vast, and even in kind of a general category of Argentinian Pinot, well, they produce Pinot in 2 different places. So there can always be a justification because we pair one wine with one dish. Broad category pairings are kind of guidelines, but that doesn't reflect exactly what's in the glass and on the table. So in that regard, you could almost not make a mistake unless you have Merlot and Crab. Like that would be terrible.
So as a plot point, I thought it was absolutely brilliant because you realize that her ability to fail in this story is really quite profound. Yes, starting with that particular pairing. Okay, so just one more fact check here. Cat's pee as a tasting note for Sauvignon Blanc. Do you want to talk, Lizzy, about how that was woven into your story?
I'm going to really struggle to dig up where I got that from, but it's kind of I'm from New Zealand, where we produce a lot of Sauvignon Blanc, and that's always the gag, have we got a bottle of cat's piss in the fridge? So that's kind of the gag at home. But apparently it's a sign that it's a good Sauvignon Blanc. So help me, Heather.
Of course. So that cat's pee aromatic, that kind of ammoniated quality. I mean, wine is really just a collection of aromatics, so terpenes and thiols held in solution with alcohol and water. So there are certain chemical combinations that will give you those kind of lifted ammonia qualities. And that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about cat's pee as part of Sauvignon Blanc. Because of its makeup, it tends to have more pyrazines, which is the chemical compound that will give you those green grassy aromatics. So sometimes it's jalapeno, sometimes it's bell pepper. And when we see that in combination with another chemical compound, that's where that ammonia-ness comes from. So not all Sauvignon Blancs have it. The conditions need to be right for those 2 elements to kind of come forward and make that cat's pee smell. But we tend to not say cat's pee at a table. We say, oh, lifted, or kind of that little bit more pungent.
Right. And
so no one wants to think that there's actually cat's pee in the wine. And even I think there's still a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc that is called cat's pee, like its brand I think is cat's piss, and it's a little cat with an umbrella. I remember seeing it years ago. I have no idea if it's still in production, but it's kind of it's a thing, so we might as well joke about it.
Wow. Not terribly appetizing, but you're right, it's a marker and a note for sure that we hear about all the time. Okay, so back to the story. Birdie arrives at her new job, Lizzy, thinking that she's going to be at a rundown hotel and she'll have a wine list of maybe 10, 12 wines, when in fact this restaurant and hotel has been completely reimagined, and she has a wine list with 124 wines. So I'm just wondering, you know, why would you torture her to that extent? And because again, I could feel my heart rate going up as I read that.
Well, my uncle had the hotel, the fine dining hotel in Inverness, and they had a wine list that long. And I remember at one point I was just like, oh my God, do you ever sell any of these? And he said, well, no, we sell about 10% of them generally, and then occasionally we'll sell others. And some of the wines on there were just for the prestige of having them on the wine list. You know, they don't sell them, and eventually he cracks them open on a Christmas day with the family. So, but you know, I looked at some big hotels in Britain, like the Ritz and some various other wine lists, and they are really extensive. I mean, they're huge. And I just thought it would be really fun and a little bit wanky if they overhauled this remote Scottish Highland hotel and put an unnecessary 124 wines in the cellar. I just thought it'd be kind of funny and crazy, because I don't know that they do that anymore. Maybe you could tell me, Heather. It feels like unusual to have such an extensive list now. I know that's how it was traditionally, but what do you...
Well, I think it really depends on the style of the restaurant. Since that restaurant is kind of going for that Michelin style and doing wine and food pairings, and because supply and ordering is an issue, I don't think it's strange at all, given that any night we have 5 courses and we need at least 5 wines, and every day the menu changes. You need quite a number of tools in your tool shed to make sure that every pairing is flawless every night. So I think that this size of the list is pretty normal if that's your restaurant concept. Also, if you have a list of that size and you're only selling 10% and you employ a sommelier, then it's maybe time to look for a new sommelier. I mean, no one in hospitality is in the wine storage business. We are in the wine sales business. So one of the great things about having a sommelier on the floor is so that you can sell the breadth of that wine list, so you're not always having to default to drinking your investments. I mean, if that's what you're into, that's what I'm into. Let's drink all the good stuff, but let's also sell that through. That way we can always have new fun toys.
Right.
Yeah. I think at my uncle's hotel, it was like a family hotel, and yeah, it was his cellar and the hotel cellar, you know.
Nice. So Heather, when you saw that in the book, and we see how Heather has to, or Bertie rather, has to, you know, actually start to learn this list. Is that your experience on the floor? If you inherit a list that size, are you having to memorize?
Yes.
All of those?
Okay.
All of those. So what was your reaction to Lizzy's story then at that point?
I saw a lot of myself in her, oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed. There's so much here I don't know. Because the first program I was gifted, the program was built out by one of Canada's top sommeliers at the time, and she had to leave hospitality. Her mom was diagnosed with cancer, and it was very serious and very quick. So she walked away from hospitality so she could care for her mother full time. And I was kind of the junior wine server, so I was given everything. So there were back vintages, old wines, first growth Bordeaux, Grand Cru Burgundy, a huge champagne selection, because the restaurant I was working at was tasting menu only. You could do 5 or 10 courses. And it was, I just saw a lot of myself there. I'm like, okay, how did I start? I started with flashcards, just books and books and books of flashcards, little index cards. I got little key rings and just was always drilling myself.
Oh, this is amazing.
Yeah, and it was kind of funny. So even during service, when I was kind of running up the ladder to grab something, I had a little secondary flashcard of everything in the cellar, so I could just review like fun producer facts or regional information or anything super noteworthy about the wine. And also, because a sommelier, we check the wine first for health, and then we pour it to you to check for preference. I was able to taste a lot of these wines, and then as I'm walking away in my little waiter's notepad, I'm writing quick notes on structure, potential pairings, how I want to see this wine used. So working in a restaurant that also has a tasting menu means that I'm always trying wines. So in that year and a half that I was in that position, I tried so many wines and so many food and wines together that it really started to click for me how pairings should work. And now, without almost tasting a dish, I can give you 3 or 4 pairings based on not only it's going to go with the dish, but based on what a guest would like. Because I think there was that, for me, a super fun part when the critic was in, and she pretty much says, well, if you want to drink only red, I guess you're effed. Like, I don't know what to tell you. And I'm like, number one, I would have loved to say that so many times. I can't believe she actually did. But also, that's a really common ask. So figuring out the structure of red wine that's going to work, and then conversely, figuring out how to sell someone maybe on a different wine that's not exactly what they want, but will go well. It's a good split the difference.
Right. So
Mm.
Lizzy, can we just flip back to the story? Thanks, Heather. That's yeah, that's
Amazing.
yeah, truly. You introduce in the story some heavy themes as well. We've got a character, Bill, who is a closet alcoholic. And we've got some serious childhood trauma that Bertie, or Heather, is dealing with in this story. Can you just talk a little bit about why you wanted to introduce some of those themes as well? I mean, it's a fun read, but it's also a very balanced and pragmatic perspective.
Well, I think anyone that's worked in hospitality knows that there's drinking problems behind the scenes. It's really common. And I felt like, you know, an older single bartending gent, that could be one of the things that he's dealing with, you know, felt very realistic to me. In fact, you know, I've worked with many of them, so I know it's a common problem in hospitality, you know. So I did want to have that in there. And then also, you know, Heather, Birdie needed to not trust herself. She needed to be unsure of herself and untrusting of her own intuition and her feelings. And my mum's actually a therapist, so I talked to her a lot about, you know, how could a person get to 30 and like not trust anything, any of their decisions or any of their decision makings, and become quite impulsive and self-destructive. And we talked about loads of options. And then, you know, I wanted her to have a background where, you know, she was fed and watered and had a roof over her head, but she lacked those things that you need from parents, which is encouragement and, you know, to have herself affirmed, and her, you know, to be told that she's right and that it's okay to feel a certain way. So that's how I worked it backwards to give that depth. And I was like watching a lot of shows around that time of quite TV actually, of quite complex female characters that were funny and really wildly entertaining, and also not shying away from having a heavy background. I mean, Fleabag's a really good example. And I thought, you know, screw it. I don't want to write a rom-com where everything's rosy. I want to write something a bit more realistic. So that's what I did.
Well, and yeah, and I think it's it just makes it such a real and really poignant read in so many places as well. Her self-esteem is just so battered, but in the end, she comes through this amazing event. And so, Heather, maybe you can talk about. For me, that was the Birdie's finest moment. I wonder if you could talk about the Highland Fling and how she managed herself there, because you made a really interesting comment to me about the skill set that's required by sommeliers.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the access to the world of wine and studying about wine is certainly not reserved for one specific group of humans. Anyone can crack a book and crack a bottle and memorize a bunch of details about rootstocks and pruning and vintage guides. Like, that's all classwork, no different than studying for anything else. But I think what that kind of part of the book really showed was the showmanship aspect that is so key to not just being a good sommelier, but being a great sommelier. Part of why people love to dine in restaurants is because of the pageantry. It's because of the show, because it's entertainment and nourishment, not just physical nourishment, but it feels good to be entertained. It feels good to be in a room filled with people, cracking jokes, enjoying wine, and being kind of guided through this experience. And I thought it's amazing. So amazing. That is not a skill that you can pick up in a book. Either you're a warm, engaging person that others are drawn to, and I felt that about Birdie a lot. She's someone who collects people. And I think that is so key, so core to being a really great hospitalitarian, and you can't learn that. It's something you have or you don't have.
Yeah, you know, that it's really interesting because I went to the Fat Duck, you know, the Fat Duck, Heston Blumenfeld's a famous restaurant. I waited a year to get in, and it was like the time of my life. And somebody said, I can't believe you spent £200 going to dinner. And I was like, it was not just dinner. It was a 5 or 6 hour theatre production with the best food and wine in the world. I mean, it was so incredible. Every single dish was incredible. And it was an art form, the whole thing. And I mean, it's such a funny old restaurant too. It's like so unassuming little pub basically. But yeah, I mean, it's just for me, exactly what you're talking about, Heather, that passion and the pageantry and having somebody come to your table and say, I know the wine for you. I'm going to go and get it. You're going to love it. And it takes all of the fear away from you if you're nervous about ordering. A really good sommelier can guess your budget as well, pretty well. And all of that stuff is incredible and part of hospitality and why it's so magic,
Right.
you know?
Beautiful.
Yeah, I'm getting teary because like everything's been shut here for like 6 months, and like it's opening in 5 days. And I'm so excited to go back and tip everyone as much as I can and get them all back in business single-handedly.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah, dining here in Toronto has been closed for 350 days. Like it's.
Oh yeah, the industry is in such dire shape right now. It's terrible. Yeah. Okay. Embarrassing stories, Heather, that you want to share with us. Lizzy did a fabulous job of inserting all sorts of embarrassing moments in the story itself. Any that you want to add? This gives her fodder for round 2, of course.
Round 2. I really love when the critic came for dinner, and it was the night where nothing could go right. And like those services are like the most devastating services, because it's like one small thing and then one small thing and one small thing, and now everything is on fire. And I read that and I had to like put the book down and walk away for a second, because as like a performer, as a sommelier, as someone who loves to entertain, I love to make people feel good. When that doesn't happen, it's so crushing. So that was that was so hard to read, because I felt all of the time that definitely happened to me with my team on the floor. So seeing that, and then we dropped a bottle of wine. Of course we did. Of course we did. Should we just go and punch him in the face? Like, what else could we do here? That was super great. And I loved after her first shift on the floor, where she's like knocked out, her feet hurt, everything hurts, her uniform is uncomfortable. I'm like, oh yeah, welcome to hospitality. Now just do that 10 more days in a row, or for the entire month of December. And
and a couple of split shifts just to break you.
Oh yes.
Yes. All right, so can we ask Lizzy what's next for Lizzy Dent and the summer job? Where's the story going?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's at the moment there's no plans to write another book, but I am working on the development of it for TV, so that's exciting. Who knows how far that will go, but that's happening, which is pretty exciting. But yeah, I'm just working on my next book now and trying to ride the crazy publicity machine. And I haven't seen my book in a bookstore yet. It's been out for a month in the UK, but I think I can travel again in 6 weeks. So I'm going to go and see my book in a bookshop.
I can't imagine how exciting that would be. That's fabulous news. And I know in Canada and in the US, my understanding it's out this week. So hopefully we can send a few people online. And since the bookstores sadly are closed here for the next little while. Any thoughts, Heather, that you want to share? Final thoughts?
Lizzy, I think you did a great job. I really enjoyed traveling to the Scottish countryside from the comfort of my living room. It was a wonderful read. Thank you.
I'm so pleased at your assessment of it, because some of the reviews have said it's so far-fetched that she could turn up there, and so now I feel a little bit like, okay, I know it's far-fetched, but a sommelier called Heather said that it was still realistic in parts.
Yeah, like, come on. You have to commit to taking a journey if you're ever going to like really fall in love with a book. So yeah, some parts, could it be possible to fake your way through an interview? Well, maybe, but like not having service mechanics, everyone would go, oh no. But just enjoy the journey.
Totally. And she so redeemed herself at the event, the Scottish Highland event. She was just brilliant, I thought. So it was, yeah, and the whole ending is so lovely as well. That little rom-com piece falls into place very nicely. Okay, thank you both so much.
That's amazing.
It's been such a pleasure reading your book, Lizzy, and Heather, thank you for your wisdom and all you do to keep us sated with wine here in Ontario. Sips Toronto, anything guests should know, Heather, about how to find you?
Just online, sipstoronto.com, and we're here for all of your beverage needs. A little bit of jazz hands. We always need to be entertained.
Thank you both so much, Lizzy. Good luck with your next project, and I hope the book flies, off the virtual shelves.
Thank you so much, Heather. We should hook up. I'd love to do the wine chat with you again sometime.
Absolutely.
Perfect. That sounds good. All right.
Take care.
Near you. Take care.
Everyone.
Bye.